I used to think getting older meant losing pieces of yourself, your beauty, your spark, your purpose. But I was wrong. My name is Grace Miller, and this is the story of how my age became my greatest power. I grew up in Seattle, a city that never stops raining, yet somehow never loses its light. I had always been full of energy, creative, and ready to take on the world. In my 20s, I believed success had an expiration date, that by 40, I should have had everything figured out: career, marriage, children, happiness neatly wrapped in a bow. But life had different plans. At 45, I found myself divorced, jobless, and living in a small apartment that echoed with silence. My daughter, Emma, was in college on the other side of the country. The loneliness hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just about being alone, it was about feeling invisible. The world had moved on. My friends were busy, my career seemed outdated, and every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized. My confidence had faded under the weight of regret. Then one morning, I woke up and made a decision. I wasn't going to let life happen to me anymore, I was going to live it. I got dressed, grabbed my coffee, and went for a walk downtown. The air smelled like wet pavement and roasted beans. I stopped by a small bookstore, the kind with uneven shelves and handwritten signs, and noticed a flyer pinned to the bulletin board. Greater Than, Community Center Workshop, share your story, inspire others. Something inside me stirred. I had stories, so many. Not glamorous ones, but real, messy, human stories. I signed up. The first day I walked into that community center, I felt awkward. Everyone seemed younger, more confident, and their words flowed like rivers. Mine felt like stones, but the coordinator, a cheerful woman named Nancy, smiled warmly and said, "Grace, sometimes the quietest voices hold the loudest truths." Those words stuck with me. Each week, I shared small pieces of my life, my divorce, my struggles, my rediscovery of faith, the loneliness that turned into strength. People listened. They cried. They laughed. Some even thanked me afterward. It was the first time in years that I felt seen. One day, Nancy pulled me aside and said, "Grace, you have a gift. Have you ever thought about recording your stories?" I laughed. "I can barely figure out my phone's flashlight, and you want me to record videos?" She smiled. "Let's just say people your age are exactly who the world needs to hear from right now." Something clicked. That night, I set up my phone on a stack of books, turned on a lamp, and recorded my first video. I spoke about fear, loss, and the power of starting over, not perfectly, but honestly. I posted it online and went to bed, expecting nothing. By morning, there were thousands of views. Comments poured in. "Greater Than, I needed this today. I'm 50 and just lost my job. You gave me hope. Please don't stop sharing." For the first time, I realized my wrinkles, my years, my pain, they weren't weaknesses. They were proof that I'd lived. Proof that I had something to give. A few months later, my little online project turned into a full-time mission. I created a channel called Grace in the Storm, where I shared weekly reflections on aging, confidence, and renewal. I spoke at community events, women's groups, and even schools. The same world that once made me feel invisible now called me inspiring. But the moment that changed everything happened one summer afternoon. I was invited to speak at a local high school graduation. Standing on that stage, I looked out at hundreds of young faces, faces filled with fear of the unknown, just like I once was. I took a deep breath and said, "You will spend years chasing the idea of being enough. But one day, you'll realize, you already were. Every age has its purpose. Every season has its strength. Don't fear growing older. Fear not growing wiser." The auditorium went silent. Then applause filled the air. I could feel tears forming, not from sadness, but from pride. After the ceremony, a young girl approached me. "My mom passed away last year," she said softly. "But when you spoke, it felt like she was talking to me again." "Thank you." I hugged her tightly. That moment, that connection, was everything I had ever wanted. Years later, my channel reached millions. People from all over the world shared their own stories of renewal, healing, and hope. I often thought back to that dark apartment, that lonely morning when I thought my life was over. I smile now, knowing it was actually the beginning. Because life doesn't end when you turn 40, or 50, or 60. It begins when you stop trying to be who you were, and embrace who you've become. So if you're watching this, wondering if your time has passed, hear me when I say, it hasn't. You're not too old, too late, or too broken. You're exactly where you need to be. That's not just my message, it's my truth. And that's how I learned that age isn't something to fear. It's something to celebrate.